Hi, my name's David Thomas. Welcome to the latest issue of Think Global with David Thomas, which comes to you from my office here in Sydney, Australia, where I've been speaking to Andrew Winston in New York. Andrew is a leading thought leader, globally recognized advisor, writer and speaker on sustainable business, and he has a particular interest in climate change. I really recommend you read his book, The Big Pivot. We've been talking about China going green, a subject very close to my heart as I regularly travel to China and see and witness the great efforts they're making to clean up their environment. Here's what Andrew had to say. Andrew, good morning from Sydney, where we've got a wet and cold wintry morning. I'm sure it's a beautiful sunny evening there in New York.
It is. It's starting to fade, but it's a beautiful time of year now.
Good. So why don't we start by, maybe you could give me a bit of background on yourself, what you do,
Sure.
and some of your focus at the moment.
Sure. So I'm a corporate advisor. I consult with large companies. I speak a lot around the world, and I write quite a bit, all around how companies deal with, navigate, and kind of manage the world's mega challenges, the really big trends that are I think affecting business in a profound way. Things like extreme weather and climate, resource constraints, kind of volatility in commodity prices, the rise of technology and transparency. These are just, I think, changing what's expected of business dramatically. And I work with large companies, mostly, Fortune 200, Fortune 300, as an advisor, sometimes with large consulting projects. I do a lot of speaking to them and to their management to try to kind of catalyze change in how companies approach these issues and how they think about them.
And how's that being received, Andrew?
Well, I guess it depends on the audience. I mean, I guess the companies that hire me certainly are more in tune with these issues and sort of see them as core business issues. But I do speak around the world to much more skeptical and ambivalent and sometimes hostile audiences, I guess. But I think the topic is changing pretty dramatically over the last couple of years. I mean, in particular, climate change is something that in the United States, where obviously the majority of my work and time has been very conflicted issue, very political issue. But I think that's changing. The science is getting clearer and clearer, and just the impacts we're dealing with are getting clearer. So you're seeing less and less debate about it and more discussion about what do we do and how do we manage these issues? How do we adapt, and how do we kind of prepare for a world that's going to be a lot more volatile and a lot more challenging?
Yes. So I'd like to talk a bit about China. I travel to China regularly, and of course, many of their cities are quite polluted. But I know the enormous amount of work and effort and investment that's being made in going green as part of their 5-year plan. I just wondered, do you ever get to China? And if so, or even if not, do you have a view about where China is moving in this direction?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I've been to China a few times to speak and for groups of businesses, for particular companies. I have not spent as much time as I'd like there, certainly. I obviously, just as a visitor there, have seen the pollution and seen the kind of level of challenge that they're facing. But I follow what China's doing around climate and renewable energy pretty closely, and write a lot about the kind of work they're doing. And as a kind of a force, a deep force in the global supply and demand equation for natural resources, for commodities, that China, just through its growth, its rapid growth, is creating an enormous demand for resources. So I'm watching those issues pretty closely, and frankly, I get questions about China in my work in the United States all the time. Often from the perspective of why should we move, or why should we cut carbon if China isn't, which is kind of remarkably simplistic question, frankly, and also not, I think, reflective of what's really going on over there, where China's spending, frankly, far more money and energy resources on this move to a clean economy than I think the U.S. or Europe is. There's a tremendous amount of work going on there, and it's pretty impressive, and it's led to a huge shift in, I think, the mix of energy and the mix of transportation options in China. But I think you probably are far more deep into it and have a deeper knowledge of kind of the work going on there.
Yes, certainly. I'm aware of some of the spend, the $72 billion a year they're spending in terms of sourcing new energy and new sources of energy. Are you starting to see some of those numbers as well?
Well, the numbers are kind of amazing. I mean, if you just look at the dollars they've committed. There's been different commitments at different 5-year plans and different, global meetings where they've committed different at different times. But it's, the numbers are in the hundreds of billions of dollars over the course of the next 5 to 10 years for just say energy efficiency, for renewables. I mean, I have a client who's one of the largest tech companies, executives. He was just in China. And the kind of government, people he was working with were saying, look, you got to expect that China is going to spend about $1 trillion on new infrastructure, on new food infrastructure, new transportation, new energy, just on each of those, just trillions of dollars. And so it's resulted in China building the largest solar and wind industry in the world in the course of 6 or 7 years from almost nothing. So they're the largest producers of these technologies and now the largest users, right? So just in the first quarter of this year, China built 5 gigawatts of solar, which was more than France has in all of the country. And they're on track in China to build, I think, 17 gigawatts of solar power this year. That's a lot. It's 40% of all the new solar being put on the grid globally, and that's just solar. It's true in wind. It's true in hydro. I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of investment going on. High-speed rail, biggest high-speed rail country in the world now. I think 11,000 miles. So the numbers are impressive.
And it seems to me that they've managed to do this without a noticeable slowing of growth, in that it hasn't actually slowed them down.
No,
in fact, quite the opposite. They're actually creating new industries, and it's leading to new income, new jobs, new opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, who would have guessed that, I guess, China, in a way, are maybe the biggest Keynesian economic proponents in the world, right? I mean, they're spending so much as a government on infrastructure that clearly it's created a lot of jobs. I mean, that's just kind of basic, Econ 101 pressure going on and investment in the economy. And I mean, some of the building is probably excessive. I mean, people say there's a real estate bubble there, but infrastructure is, I think, very hard to see it going to waste, right? People are going to use the trains. They're going to use the energy grid that they're establishing. I think they've built some of it so fast that they have to catch up with the grid infrastructure. They have some wind, I think, that they can't even connect because they're moving so quickly. So I think it's been a tremendous boost for the economy there. But again, as you mentioned at the beginning, they really have to. I mean, the air quality is really dangerous, and a lot of that comes from burning coal, and that's still the majority of the energy there. I think it's close to 62% of something of the energy. It's a big number, but it's coming down. And coal imports dropped dramatically the first quarter of this year in China for the first time, I think, and that impacts Australia, obviously, where you're working, and has huge impacts for the global trade of energy.
Yeah, I often say industrial revolutions are no fun. You only have to read the works of Charles Dickens to know what they're like. And China's about halfway through theirs. But I know that towards the end of last year, China signed a deal with America in terms of reduction in emissions, and they set some pretty out there targets. I think most people seem to think the Chinese can probably meet those targets, but they have some doubts about whether the US can. Do you have any view on that?
Well, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, the China agreed to, I think, cap their emissions by 2030, and I think informally cap their coal use by 2020. And so, yeah, I would agree that I haven't seen China not hit targets so far. I mean, when they set their mind to it, they have obviously the ability and the government structure to just do it. The U.S.'s commitment is on some level more aggressive because it's an actual real reduction from 2005 emissions to, I think, 26 to 28% by 2025. I actually don't think the U.S. is going to have much trouble meeting that because I don't think it's all that aggressive in reality. There's so much going on with the move to natural gas from fracking and the change in the economics of renewable energy are driving down emissions. We've kind of hit peak, I think, gasoline use in this country, peak driving. I mean, the efficiency levels are rising and rising, and corporations are really investing more and more. I think we're going to hit that number without excessive effort. And there's a lot of the rules in place already, like a significant increase in fuel efficiency for cars has already been passed a couple years ago. By 2025, basically a doubling of fuel efficiency. That alone is going to take care of a chunk of that commitment. So, and there's new rules on coal plants. I mean, look, we're going to have another election next year. You could see a change in party in the presidency. So you never know what they could go back on. But right now, I think the economics of energy are moving so that the U.S. will hit that number. The real challenge is that the number is not aggressive enough if you look at the actual science of climate and how fast we need to go. And that's what's kind of makes me more nervous. It's not that we won't hit it, it's that it's not good enough even if we do.
Yes. So Andrew, any last thoughts on China and why we should be optimistic about the future in terms of reacting to climate change?
Yeah, look, I am optimistic, I think, and China is one of the reasons, because they do invest so much. And it's interesting, if you talk about solar in the U.S., there's a famous bankruptcy of a company, Solyndra, in the U.S. that was making panels. One of the reasons, and one of the main reasons it went under, is because China's investment had dropped the price of producing a panel so far, and China did to solar what it's done to electronics and apparel and many other things over years, which is to drive down the price, which is not good if you're manufacturing that, but is good for every other sector of the economy. Everybody else needs renewable energy. So by and large, it's a very good thing. And China is one of the main reasons that solar and wind have dropped 70, 80% in cost in the last 5 or 6 years. That is changing the discussion and the equation just in such a profound way around the world. It is no longer right to say renewable energy is too expensive. It just isn't anymore. And China is the main reason for that. So I thank them in that sense. But they're tough to compete against for manufacturing. But bringing the cost down of these new technologies is by and large a very good thing. So I think this is going to work out to everyone's benefit. And China is one of the main reasons.
Great. Well, thank you, Andrew. It's great to talk to you. Let's stay in touch and look forward to seeing you, perhaps in China one day.
I hope so.